Hi, happy Columbus Day. I wanted to wish all of you a happy day as we reflect upon the founding of America. I say the founding of America because, of course, America is much more than the social-political construction of America, so far beyond the founding of the American government, which we celebrate on other days, and of course on President's Day. And this will be interesting now that we will celebrate a new kind of presidency come this President's Day. But I look forward to President's Day, 15 years from now, and how we'll look back on this nation's history. So considering, again, the day in 1492 when Christopher Columbus, an Italian, immigrated, opened immigration to the United States. Now, of course, we know what that immigration has meant. I think just on the real, that you just need to see Guns, Germs, and Steel, a 4-part series that you can find right here on YouTube, or read the book. It's a quite dense one, but it talks about, how this man sees the unfolding of this new world, pluralistic. I say that it founded a new world order. That meeting between Europeans coming to this part of the world. And so as we reflect upon Columbus Day, I really want us to consider a few things around, the annihilation of the indigenous peoples, and particularly the annihilation of the indigenous people, because we also have to recognize that we occupy this place. And we have to consider, what does it mean to occupy, particularly as we have people who are also occupying, Iraq. We are pseudo-occupying Afghanistan. We've occupied Philippines. We've occupied, we occupy Hawaii, American Samoa, Guam, Puerto Rico, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, beyond just, the continental United States. So there are many models of pluralism. Native Americans lived in this place for thousands of years more than, when Christopher Columbus came, and there were cross-cultural interactions. And there have always been, as Guns, Germs, and Steel will show you, for those of you who didn't catch it in elementary school or at home, which is where I learned a lot of the real American history, not at school, people have been interacting. So it's not as if everybody was waiting for somebody else to discover that there's what we now call racial difference. There were Africans going to South Asia and South Asians coming to Africa. There's evidence of at least trade with China in Africa that goes back, centuries. And beyond just like 1492, kind of like stuff. And then, of course, we have to consider prehistory, before the documented word in Africa being an oral, still, persisting with this oral tradition. I think we should really consider how we look at prehistory, even when we gaze upon today, and I'm getting back there. But how we look upon history. What are the stories that we tell about history? As opposed to just history, the things that were written down. And we have to also understand that because when things are written down, we have to consider that there's an author, there's a socio-political, religious, linguistic bias, gender bias, class bias, all these things into the written word, as in the spoken word. But the spoken word is didactic. The spoken word is not has been used as a tool, but it does not have the power to oppress the way that the written word does, have the power to become finite in people's lives, like a constitution. So when we consider Columbus Day, we have to consider what we're willing to tell about it. Now, a lot of Americans grow up learning about Christopher Columbus on Columbus Day, and they learn about it from Christopher Columbus's perspective. And we even learned, we have what's written about Christopher. Perfect example. We get to read Christopher Columbus, what he wrote. We get to read what Christopher Columbus, um, what his crew members said and thought and blah, 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 blah. I mean, we wouldn't have known about the smallpox and how it annihilated native populations, just rats. Had not scientists, modern scientists, through the Western, Socratic tradition, looked back and said, look at pollen, you know what I mean? Scientifically break down why there's smallpox and the effect that it had on the native population. Again, this is all comes from gun strengths and steel. But those stories are already there. If we had bothered to look at Columbus Day from another perspective, we would already have known about smallpox. Native populations were inscribing it. We're also telling stories about it, and there are even living history of stories about that period. So that just goes to show one instance where we privilege the written word over the spoken word. And I know that there are issues of accuracy, but there are ways to transmit, and the accuracy, and that becomes even then a principle of the written word, is this premise of accuracy. And yet we know we have a Bible, we have a Constitution that goes through different interpretations by time, as opposed to what people call um, a living history, where it's spoken about, where we speak about generations back, and we tell you about them in the mangoes they ate, you go seeing where they sat and shat. And that's a different way of looking at history, as opposed to preserving it, putting some barbed wires around it, and only inviting people to take pictures and show reverence towards it. It's more like here you have in India, you have a Mughal tomb where couples sit because it's quiet and dark and they can snuggle and kiss, what they can't do at home because they're like, mommy, father, auntie, uncle, grandparents, cousins, brothers, sisters at home. So what used to be a mosque in one century, in living history, is the couple's corner. And in this Western tradition, that would be seen as sacrilege. No, you have to cordon it off, and you have to frame it like this. And that's what we've done to Columbus. Is we've said Columbus means this. So when we're often talking about, and people say arguing about, well, what does Columbus Day mean? We're either simply talking about Columbus's perspective only, or we're saying what is the reality of the totality of, and the totality of that, of course, means what are the voices of the people that are here. At least start with that. What does it mean to be American and have X, Y, and Z history as opposed to A, B, and C history? But we're all here. White, black, tan, red, yellow. So what are these voices, and how do they respond to each other? And with this constant framing of, and we do it even, the textbooks themselves do it. We wear this mask. The textbooks themselves do it. They say this is what history is. So we all know the drill. We know the one day we jump the slavery. You can see it now in my 8th grade book. We have slavery and chains on one side, Martin Luther King on the next page. That's how we get. You can see how much we get to learn about it. And in the middle is somebody like Abraham Lincoln. But in the corner, and this is the part they don't show you, or it's on the next page, is Andrew Jackson. And that's the real America that he's closeted. We don't really get to learn that, oh, that's the character of America that keeps reemerging no matter what we do, no matter how much our voices come together. And, we've had to do that in conflict when all of these voices come together as opposed to in dialogue. And that's why Obama won the Peace Prize. But in the past, we've had to come to arms when so many voices came to the table, when power threatens to change hands. And then that's, war after war. And then the Civil War, what I call the civilized war, it's the civil rights. When more voices came to the table, we said, we have to stop fighting. So Obama has taken that to the next level. And that's what Columbus Day means to me, is how do we more incorporate our voices? And part of that does mean that we reconcile with that history. Reconcile also means if there are things that need to be apologized for, people need to apologize for them. Let's stop. Well, there is no distancing oneself from that history. It's living history. We have the stories here now, living. It is living history. And that is the beauty of America, is that like a fungus, it grows.